Welcome back, learner, to another deep dive. Today, we're looking at a really fascinating piece of material from the Beagle Health Academy.
Yeah, season 20, episode 5.
Right, the one titled The Owner's Nose.
Yeah.
And, usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this, I don't know, this underlying expectation of total precision.
Oh, absolutely. It feels like engineering.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points and says, well, there it is.
Yeah, you know exactly what's wrong and you know exactly how to fix it.
Okay.
It's binary. I mean, it's either broken or it's not broken.
Right?
It's clean, it's objective, and frankly, it's comforting. As humans, we really like things to be visible and easily
They
categorized.
do. But then you step into the world of pet health, and which is exactly what the Academy episode unpacks today, and suddenly that x-ray machine is just entirely useless for the day-to-day stuff.
Right. You're suddenly looking at a diagnostic landscape that is incredibly subtle.
Yeah, so our mission for this deep dive isn't to hand you this scary medical checklist to memorize. It's to completely transform how you think about your dog's health.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about developing your own, metaphorical nose for the subtle whispers of a dog's body before those whispers ever become emergency shouts.
Which is such a brilliant way for the episode's creators to frame it. I mean, think about it. Beagles use their extraordinary literal sense of smell to interpret the physical world.
Oh, yeah. It's their primary lens for reality.
Exactly. But the best owners, they develop a sensory intuition of their own. They learn to decode their beagle's health through this hyper-close observation.
Okay, so let's unpack this. I like to think of it kind of like learning to read the subtle dashboard indicators of your car.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Right. Like you know your car so well that you notice a slight, almost imperceptible change in the engine's hum, or a tiny vibration in the steering wheel. And this is weeks before the check engine light actually illuminates.
Yeah, you aren't a mechanic, but you just know when something is off.
Exactly.
And to understand why this intuitive observation is so critical for beagles specifically, we have to look at their biological foundation.
Okay.
Historically, beagles are this inherently hardy, resilient breed. I mean, they were literally bred for endurance.
Right, the hunting background.
Yeah, for centuries, these dogs were working long, grueling days, tracking scents across incredibly demanding, uneven terrain. Only the most robust, physically capable dogs thrived, and they were the ones bred forward.
So they basically have this profound legacy of toughness just baked right into their DNA.
They do. But here is where it gets interesting, and frankly, where a lot of owners get tripped up. That robust history does not mean they are invincible.
No.
No, not at all. What it actually means is that their health issues often show up in highly specific, sometimes very deceptive ways. They're stoic by design.
Ah, because they're built to keep going despite the discomfort.
Exactly. So they don't complain early, they whisper.
Which leads us right into what I think is the most fascinating paradox in this entire discussion. We just established this history of endurance, right?
Right.
But that exact history directly causes their most common, yet most preventable modern health issue. We're talking about obesity.
Yes. The paradox of the working appetite.
Yeah.
If you look at the beagle's history, they needed an incredibly powerful food drive. I mean, if you're burning thousands of calories running through dense brush and open fields all day.
A massive appetite is a non-negotiable survival mechanism.
Exactly. It keeps you fueled, it keeps you alive.
But today, that same evolutionary drive is just sitting on a plush rug in a modern living room.
Yeah.
And that leads to this gradual, insidious weight gain, a pound here, a pound there. It happens so slowly that the owner doesn't even notice the dog's body condition has entirely shifted.
And we really need to emphasize why this matters in a medical context, too. Excess weight on a beagle isn't just an aesthetic issue.
It's not just them looking a little chunky.
Right. Or cute. It fundamentally alters their skeletal mechanics. It places severe, constant strain on their joints. And, as we'll see in a moment, it exacerbates almost every other structural condition we're going to discuss today.
Wow.
Yeah. And the most effective preventative measure is remarkably simple. Monthly, hands-on body condition checks.
Hands-on, meaning you can't just rely on your eyes.
Exactly. You have to physically run your hands over their sides and feel for the ribs, because a beagle's coat and their shape will totally deceive you as the weight creeps on.
Okay, but I have to push back on this a little bit because I think a lot of owners genuinely struggle here.
Sure.
If a dog is acting hungry all the time, like literally staring at you, drooling, acting like they haven't eaten in weeks, isn't it just human nature to assume they actually need food?
Oh, absolutely.
it feels like we're fighting the dog's own evolutionary programming by denying them. I mean, it reminds me of human biology.
How so?
Well, we have this biological craving for sugar and fat that was incredibly useful for ancient survival when calories were scarce. But it is an absolute disaster in a modern candy store, you know.
That is a perfect analogy, honestly, because you are fighting an evolutionary ghost.
An evolutionary ghost.
Yeah. In beagles, appetite is fundamentally, categorically not a reliable indicator of caloric need. The biological switch that says, I'm full, is essentially broken.
Or just ignored by their drive to store energy.
Exactly. They will eat as if they're preparing for a grueling 10-hour hunt, even if their only exercise that day was like a slow walk to the mailbox.
Right.
Overfeeding based on perceived hunger is one of the greatest traps of modern pet ownership.
So we basically have to outsmart their instincts for their own good.
We do.
Because that excess weight puts immense pressure on their frame. But moving beyond just the weight, the actual physical structure of that frame, the very traits that make a beagle so recognizable, brings its own unique set of vulnerabilities.
Right, so let's shift from the general weight pressure to their specific structural blueprint. Take the ears, for example.
The famous floppy ears.
Exactly. Those long, pendulous ears are iconic, and their biological purpose is to act almost like a funnel.
A funnel.
Yeah, they sweep scent from the ground up toward the beagle's nose as they track. It's an incredible adaptation.
That's amazing.
But structurally, that creates a low airflow, deeply warm, enclosed environment inside the ear canal.
Wait, so by trying to breed the ultimate scent tracking funnel, humans basically engineered a biological greenhouse on the side of the dog's head.
A biological greenhouse is exactly what it is, and that microclimate is incredibly prone to trapping moisture and debris.
Oh, I see.
Think about a beagle after a muddy walk or a swim, or even just existing outside on a really humid day. That trapped moisture has nowhere to evaporate.
And it just sits there.
Right. It becomes a perfect breeding ground for yeast and bacteria, which leads to a condition called otitis externa.
Okay, what is that?
It's a severe inflammation and infection of the outer ear canal.
Ouch. But the whispers for this one seem a bit louder, though, right? The material points out that you should watch for increased head shaking, scratching at the ears, a noticeable odor, redness, or a head tilt.
Yes, a head tilt or a sudden sensitivity when you pet their head are key indicators. The inflammation causes genuine pain.
So what's the prevention?
The prevention here isn't some medical mystery. It is diligent, gentle cleaning with vet-recommended drying products after those wet or muddy adventures. You're basically ventilating that greenhouse.
Got it. Now, what about the rest of the chassis?
Yeah.
The joints and the spine, because they have a very distinct body shape.
This is where we see conditions like hip dysplasia and intervertebral disc disease, or IVDD for short.
Let's start with hip dysplasia.
Okay, so let's look at the mechanism. It's a developmental issue. In a healthy dog, the hip is a smooth ball and socket joint, right?
Right.
But in a dysplastic dog, that joint doesn't form perfectly. So instead of gliding, the bones rub and grind together. Yeah, over time, this causes microtrauma and arthritis. You might see a subtle reluctance to jump or maybe an intermittent limp, especially after a long walk or a play session.
Okay. And what about IVDD? Because that sounds incredibly serious. How does that actually happen?
It is extremely serious. To understand IVDD, you have to picture the spine. Between each bony vertebra, there's a cushioning disc. Think of it like a jelly donut.
A jelly donut?
Yeah, a tough outer ring with a soft, shock-absorbing center. And given the beagle's body proportions, they're sturdy and relatively heavy, but they have a disproportionately long back compared to their leg height.
Right, they're kind of long and low.
Exactly. So those discs endure uneven mechanical stress. Over time, or with the sudden impact, that tough outer ring can tear, and the soft center bulges out or completely ruptures.
And when it ruptures, it presses right into the spinal cord.
Yes, it compresses the nerve.
That's terrifying.
It is. The signs here are a hunched or tense posture, a sudden reluctance to move their neck, dragging of the hind legs, or apparent unexplained back pain.
And this is where the Academy episode draws a very hard line. It explicitly states that any reluctance to use stairs or jump into a car is not a wait-and-see situation. It requires a same-day veterinary conversation.
Precisely. Because with spinal compression, the inflammation cascade happens fast.
Like, how fast?
Fast enough that the difference between a few hours can literally be the difference between a full recovery and permanent paralysis.
Wow.
If the whisper is, I normally jump on the couch, but today I'm standing here staring at it, you do not wait for the shout, you go to the vet.
Okay, so structural issues, like an intermittent limp, a hunchback, or relentlessly scratching an infected ear, those are visible.
Right.
Even if they're subtle whispers, they're happening on the outside where we can observe the mechanics failing. But here's where it gets really interesting. What happens when the dog's health issues are completely invisible? Or worse, they disguise themselves as something else entirely.
This is where we transition from the external anatomy to the internal systemic conditions. And this requires a true proactive partnership with a veterinarian to decode.
Because you can't see them coming.
Exactly, not just by watching the dog walk. Let's start with the nervous system. Epilepsy.
Right. Recurrent seizures, which the material describes as a sudden loss of consciousness, uncontrolled shaking or paddling motions with the legs, and sometimes heavy drooling.
Yes.
It sounds absolutely terrifying for an owner to witness.
Yeah.
But what is actually happening in the body?
It's essentially an electrical storm in the brain. The normal, regulated firing of neurons suddenly surges and becomes chaotic. It temporarily short-circuits the dog's motor control and consciousness.
That must be so disorienting for the dog.
Deeply disorienting and terrifying for the owner, like you said. But the crucial first aid steps are all about managing the physical environment while the storm passes.
Okay, so what do you do?
If a seizure happens, your job is to keep the dog safe from nearby objects, sharp corners, or stairs.
And there's a big warning here in the source. Never put your hands near their mouth during an episode.
Never, because they have absolutely zero conscious control over their jaw muscles during that electrical storm.
Oh, so they could bite down.
They could inadvertently bite down with full force. You need to keep your distance, time the episode, and contact a vet immediately, especially if it's a first-time event or if it lasts longer than 2 to 3 minutes.
Because prolonged seizures are dangerous, right?
Very. They can cause permanent brain damage.
So epilepsy is this sudden, invisible electrical threat. But there's another internal condition discussed that is much slower and far more deceptive.
Hypothyroidism.
Yes. The thyroid gland is basically the body's metabolic thermostat.
Okay.
Hypothyroidism is a condition where that gland simply stops producing enough hormone to keep the furnace running. It dictates the dog's entire metabolism. When it fails, the whole system slows down.
What does that look like?
You see rapid weight gain despite a completely stable diet, incredibly low energy, a dull, thinning coat, and an increased sensitivity to the cold.
Because they can't generate heat.
Exactly. They literally can't generate enough internal heat.
Okay, wait, stop right there because this highlights exactly how tricky this whole landscape is.
Let's think about what we've discussed so far today. Hypothyroidism causes weight gain and low energy. But wait, earlier we established that beagles naturally gain weight if we just look at them the wrong way because of their intense food drive.
And they do.
And logically, any dog naturally slows down a bit as it ages. So how on earth is a listener supposed to tell the difference between normal aging, feeding their dog too many treats, and a failing metabolic thermostat? I mean, they look exactly the same.
They absolutely do. It is the ultimate mimic. And that exact overlap is why routine annual veterinary blood work is entirely non-negotiable.
Oh, because you can't diagnose it at home.
You cannot diagnose hypothyroidism at home by just looking at your dog. You might think, oh, he's just getting old and lazy. But blood work makes the invisible visible.
Right.
It measures the exact hormone levels and gives you the actual objective data on what the thyroid is doing.
It takes the guesswork out of it entirely. And the material goes on to explore how other common issues require us to understand the underlying mechanisms, not just the surface symptoms. Like, take cherry eye, for instance. It sounds awful like an actual injury to the eyeball, but it's structural failure, right?
Exactly. Most dogs have a third eyelid called the nictitating membrane. It hides in the inner corner of their eye for extra protection and houses a tear gland.
Okay.
Sometimes the connective tissue holding that gland in place weakens and the gland prolapses. It essentially pops out of place.
And that's the cherry.
Yeah, it looks like a bright red swollen cherry in the corner of the eye, but it's not a tumor and it's not a trauma. It's just a displaced gland that needs surgical tacking to put it back.
Good to know. And then there's dental disease, which owners often miss until it's severe. You're supposed to look out for tartar and gum redness. But the danger isn't just bad breath, is it?
No, it's a whole bacterial cascade. Plaque hardens into tartar, which physically pushes the gums away from the teeth, creating these pockets of deep infection.
Oh, gross.
Yeah, and those bacteria don't just stay in the mouth. They can enter the bloodstream through the inflamed gums and physically damage the valves of the heart and the filtration system of the kidneys.
Wow, just from dirty teeth.
Exactly. That's why brushing is required. You're disrupting the plaque before it hardens.
And finally, allergies. We think of human allergies as sneezing and watery eyes, but in dogs, it shows up as paw licking or itchiness. Why the paws?
Because of how their immune system processes histamine.
Okay.
When a dog inhales pollen or absorbs an environmental allergen through their skin, their histamine response doesn't typically target the respiratory system like ours does.
Interesting.
It causes localized inflammation in their extremities and their skin. So an itchy, obsessive paw-licking habit isn't them grooming themselves.
It's an allergy.
Yes, it's a histamine reaction that they are actively trying to soothe.
Which brings us to the final and maybe most important part of this deep dive. Because symptoms like hypothyroidism can mimic normal aging, or an allergy can mimic normal grooming, the biggest barrier to a beagle's health isn't their genetics.
No.
It's us. It's the owner's own assumptions and cognitive traps.
Precisely. The creators of this episode specifically call out several myths that prevent owners from acting on these subtle whispers. These are the psychological hurdles we have to clear.
Let's break them down. Myth number 1. They are tough, so they rarely get sick.
We covered this a bit at the start, but the mechanism is important. Hardiness is not immunity.
Right.
A physically resilient body can still have genetic predispositions. Assuming they're too tough to get sick just means you're actively ignoring the early warning signs because they don't fit your narrative of a tough dog.
So true. Okay, myth number 2. Ear infections are just part of owning a beagle.
This is a dangerous normalization trap.
Because of the greenhouse effect we talked about.
Yes, the greenhouse structure of their ear makes them prone. But recurring infections means something is chronically out of balance.
Ah, I see.
Chronic inflammation degrades the ear canal over time. It requires a vet to evaluate it. Perhaps they need to find an underlying food allergy causing the inflammation rather than you just shrugging and accepting that your dog will constantly be in mild pain.
That makes total sense. Myth number 3. He's slowing down because he's lazy. And this is the one I think hits home the hardest.
Oh, absolutely.
It is so incredibly easy to look at a 7-year-old dog sleeping by the fireplace on a Tuesday afternoon and think, oh, he's just enjoying his retirement. He's earned it. We don't even ask ourselves if the act of getting up actually hurts his hips.
It's a classic human projection. We assign human personality traits like laziness or a desire to retire to physical symptoms.
Wow.
Reduced activity in a historically high-energy working breed is a physical sign. It's a biological whisper. It is not a sudden personality change.
That's a huge mindset shift.
It really is. That reluctance to move could be the early friction of hip dysplasia, the nerve compression of IVDD, or, like we said, the metabolic crash of a thyroid issue.
And finally, myth number 4. The symptom disappeared, so we don't need the vet.
Okay. I'm going to play devil's advocate here for the learner listening right now.
Go for it.
Veterinary care is expensive. It is time-consuming. If my dog limps on a Tuesday, but by Wednesday morning he is running around the yard chasing a squirrel perfectly fine, it is overwhelmingly tempting to just breathe a massive sigh of relief, cancel the appointment, and save the money.
I know.
Are we really supposed to go in for a ghost symptom?
I understand the temptation perfectly. It is a very natural human reaction. But if we firmly ground this in the physiological realities we've discussed,
Yes.
you still go.
Really?
Yes, because a resolved symptom is just a whisper that went quiet temporarily. Think about the mechanisms. Neurological issues like an early mild seizure or orthopedic issues like a bulging disc and IVDD can absolutely present with symptoms that fluctuate.
Oh, because the inflammation goes down for a day. Exactly. The local swelling recedes so the dog feels better, but the underlying structural cause, the friction in the hip joint, the instability in the spinal column, it absolutely remains.
It didn't magically fix itself.
Right. A proactive partnership with the vet means you mention everything you've observed. You say, he limped on Tuesday, even though he's fine today.
Because they're the early warning signs.
Yes, because those temporary fleeting symptoms are almost always the earliest warning signs. If you wait until the limp never goes away, the joint damage is permanent, and you've entirely lost your window for early, easier intervention.
So what does this all mean? If we step back and look at the entire landscape we've traversed today, the core takeaway for you is that owning a beagle, or really any dog, means inheriting the profound responsibility to simply pay attention. You do not need to be a medical expert. You don't need to understand the cellular biology of a histamine reaction.
Nope.
You just need to be an expert in your dog. You're the one who will notice the extra head shake that wasn't there last month. You're the one who will see the slight hesitation at the bottom of the stairs or, feel the slight shift in the ribs during a belly rub.
And this proactive approach, this willingness to listen to the whispers and trust your own observations, is exactly how you ensure the longest, most comfortable life for an animal that offers so much loyalty and companionship.
Absolutely.
It's about shifting your mindset from reactive care waiting for the emergency shout to proactive partnership.
It's being the best possible steward of their health. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
The Academy material ends by teasing its next topic, moving away from health and into the Beagle's independent mind and their scent-driven way of experiencing the world.
The behavioral psychology side of things.
Right. And reading that got me thinking about everything we've just discussed regarding these subtle physical whispers.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
If a beagle's entire mind and their whole behavioral world is driven by their physical senses, especially their nose, and their physical ability to explore their environment, how much of what we dismiss as bad behavior or stubbornness is actually just the very first whisper of a physical health issue, limiting their ability to interact with the world,
Oh, wow.
right? Like if they refuse to come when called, are they being stubborn, or does their neck hurt too much from an invisible spinal issue to look up?
That's a great question.
If they're suddenly destructive in the house, are they just bored, or is an undiagnosed thyroid issue causing them unseen metabolic anxiety?
That connects the physical to the psychological brilliantly. It forces us to question our assumptions entirely. I mean, a dog's behavior is often their only language.
It really is. It all comes back to developing that intuition. It comes back to the owner's nose. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, learner. Keep observing, keep questioning, and keep learning.